She's like, oh, Lisa, isn't this time of year?
All right,
like,
so
don't
I'm
you
going to
feel
call
like-
this meeting of Boylston Regional School District to order. It is not on the agenda, but let's please stand and do the pledge of allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So tonight, we're just here to talk about our superintendent search. We have Tracy Norwood from MESC to tell us a little bit about next steps.
Yeah, so thank you. It's good to be with you all. So let me just preface this by saying that everything that is on this piece of paper is for your discussion. Like, this isn't that I've decided anything. This is entirely to sort of outline, as I've been thinking about where you're at and kind of moving forward. This is what I would suggest, but all of this is open to your discussion. So, please take that in the spirit in which it is given. So as I've been considering where you're at right now, and sort of the work that you've been doing over the past number of months, sort of entering the school year, and then over the past couple of months with Mr. Ganem, what seemed to me, and if I am misreading the committee, please tell me, because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on this. It seemed to me that there was a level of comfort for the committee in continuing with an interim superintendency for next school year, okay? Now, if you were to do that, what the department has said is that Mr. Ganem would be eligible to do that. However, because you were in the sort of emergency situation you were in earlier this year, where you kind of just needed a superintendent yesterday, and we all understand that. What the department would require is that you actually do a search. Now, this does not have to be a full, extensive, like we do input sessions and multiple rounds of interviews and everything else. For an interim superintendency, what often happens is that the position gets posted. In that case, if you get posted on School Spring, we certainly can post it on our website as well. I would come to you before then with an outlined position description potential, which you then would deliberate and decide on. It would be based on kind of where you all are at in terms of governance in the district. Your work on the things you're working on, the feelings you have in terms of needing stability and wanting to make sure you continue. We would open the application process, have it open for maybe 3 weeks or so. I'm happy to receive the applications. That's often what happens. I don't have to. We would stress that the applications would be public, which isn't what happens with a full superintendent search. Usually the first round is confidential. That in and of itself does tend to sort of restrict the field a bit in terms of who's willing to actually do that. Also, the messaging you'd be giving in terms of what you're looking for at that point matters as well. I would give you all the applications. You would have a deliberative process. Depending on how many you have, you may well want to simply call in all of the applicants and do public interviews. You do interviews in public. And then actually make a decision sometime in the late spring about moving forward. Now, having spoken to the department, my understanding is that if Mr. Ganem, who as far as I know is interested in being part of that, if he were the person that you were to select, the department would be willing to grant a waiver for you to be able to retain him for another year. But again, this is sort of outlining based on my read of where you all are at. So if that's entirely not where people are, tell me that, because you're also not too late to do a full search, for a permanent replacement starting sort of immediately either. So I'm going to stop there. That's the top half of the page.
So I don't know how anybody else feels. I know the idea has been floated around. Have we done enough to recover from last year yet? Is it fair for someone to come walking into a halfway, three-quarter, whatever percentage you want to assign it, corrected mess? Let's just call it. So that is an idea that is just one idea, but does anybody questions, anything you want to say? Anything?
I mean, I think this is the first I've heard of it suggested, so that's caught me a little off guard. I mean, it's good to know the information, but honestly, it's the first time it's been suggested, so.
It is the first time, Jess. Nobody's like.
Okay, I was like,
Right,
right,
It
it's
is-
something.
I think we talked, all of our previous meetings, we asked Al, we asked Karen, what's the status? Where are things looking? Are we cleaned up? Are we ready to go? Are we a good district? Yeah, are we there? And all the answers are, work in progress, basically. And there's, effectively 3 months left of this year, right? So.
Yeah, so one of the things that I brought up to Tracy when we've had our conversations is my concern for who we're going to attract to our district. Superintendent Costello had mentioned that we, through the MASS, we didn't have, because we were kind of in flux from our previous superintendent, we didn't have the best reputation. And that's concerning to me because I want to make sure whoever we get that comes in is going to want us, is coming here for the right reasons and wants to stay here. And, when Al has come in, he does not have a desire to come out of retirement and be a full-time superintendent. And he's come in and he's really righted a lot of wrongs and found a lot of things where we could be better, which I truly appreciate. And one of my concerns that I mentioned to Tracy was we're in the middle of kind of fixing a lot of things and what are our options? Could you just explain to the committee what our options are going forward? So we're at a point where we're kind of like a crossroads. Where do we think is the best way forward for our district to get the best applicant to come?
Yeah,
So-
I mean, West Boylston's looking for a new superintendent and they have one from 30 years. So,
That's right.
So
I forgot about
that was
that.
a big concern.
Yeah.
That, we're competing with them.
Right, I saw that too, yeah.
I'm like,
And I think they started they like announced it right around when we were, but I think they already started their search.
I believe so, yeah. We're not doing that search, but I think they're much farther along. Yes. No, that's not to say you do still have time to do a full search. Like as I was mentioning to a couple of you as I was coming in, I'm doing a search in months and I'm doing input sessions with them on Thursday. Like that still can be done before the end of the year. So I want you to feel comfortable about what you're doing. I don't want you to feel rushed in sort of either way. I will say that, in general, interim superintendencies do tend to be a single year, but also interim superintendencies are usually foreseen a little bit more rather than sort of the situation that you all found yourselves in earlier this year.
I think Al is doing a spectacular job cleaning everything up, like you said, and I'd love to keep him for another year, just to complete his work. So not only not to be unfair to the new, permanent superintendent, but just to keep working on it and making everything more efficient. And I guess I'm just wondering why, if the department agrees that we can keep Al, why do we even have to go through the process?
Because it's a waiver. So you would be getting Al under an extended, you might be able to explain this better than I in terms of this, but because he's retired and it's essentially kind of an exception in the Mass Teachers Retirement System that allows a superintendent to come back and earn a particular amount of money over the course of a retired year. And in order for them to do that, they essentially need to recognize that there's some sort of a shortage. So essentially what you would be doing is you'd be going to the department and saying, we've looked, given the circumstances that we're in, it isn't as if we have a long list of people who aren't needing this exception in order to take this position.
So actually, right when I spoke with you over the summer, you were
Yeah.
super helpful. I called Tracy, just so everyone knows, this was when I was chair in the summer. Carol gave me the resignation letter. I think the next day I called MASC and they gave me Tracy's personal cell phone number. And I remember she was driving and she was like, I have one person in mind. There were some other people that kind of stepped forward, but Al was definitely the best candidate or the best fit for our district. But I looked extensively into that waiver process and we lucked out. We didn't need it for I think it goes by calendar year, and we didn't need it for September, October, November. It was August, September. So we were able to bring Alan, and at that point, to Tracy's point, it was crisis mode because school was starting in 4 weeks, and Carol was my last day is before school starts. So it was crisis mode then. So I looked into that waiver, and it's a formula of the salary, and so if you're retired, my understanding is you can't just come out of retirement because you collect a pension from the state.
Yes.
And so there's no way that Al could just be yeah, I'm done. I'm not retired anymore. And here's my pension back. I'm going to go make more money. You can't do that, but you have to show to the state. And one of the things that you have to show is that you posted the job. So I was actually freaking out in August, September, I'm like, do we need to post this? Do we need to post this? But then I calculated it out, and because it was only like 4 or 5 months of salary, we didn't meet, there's a threshold. And what we were paying him didn't hit the threshold, and that we needed a waiver for 2024. Well, now we're in 2025. So we definitely need a waiver if we want to keep him, I think, through August. I like kind of did the math out. I think it was, and it's by hours or by salary. So again, you have to at least show the state to get this waiver. You posted the job, and if no one applies for it, that's it. It ends. But if people apply, you have to show that you've looked at their applications, and then you have to show like, okay, well, the person we have here is more qualified because X, Y, and Z. So I did like a ton of research on this waiver. So I think like going back to this whole question of do we do an interim search or a regular search, I guess in my mind, so 2 questions, one for you, Tracy. Number 1, if we do this interim search, is it gonna cost us more money than, are we gonna have to pay for an interim search and then pay MASC?
Oh, gosh, no.
Okay, so it's like
No.
one price, we're
No,
hiring
and so
MASC,
this
you're gonna
is
help us fire
So the
someone.
interim superintendency kind of advice is the sort of thing that I would be talking to you about as your field director anyway.
Right, because you helped me, we
Yes.
didn't pay, yeah.
You're in the what are we doing next kind of position, right?
Yeah.
What are we doing next position that's what you've got a field director for. So I'd be having that conversation with you anyway. And it doesn't honestly on our end, I went to my boss and said they're talking about whether they want to do it now or next year. And he shrugged and talked about when we would be claiming it in which calendar year anyway. It doesn't make any difference from the MASC perspective in terms of finances either.
Okay,
So it's from our perspective, it is entirely what you all want to do.
and then I guess the other thing, I agree, I think Al's been doing a great job. I'd love to keep him on for another year for stability. But I feel like one misstep, and I'll kind of say it because I was on the committee then, and I was one of the people that partook in this. One misstep we made was, we had Carol was this candidate, and we were told, oh, like she's great, let's just keep her. And it worked out, like it really did. It worked out. She was what we needed at the time. But I just worry about input from the community and the public, and I think that is important. And so I guess my question is, if we're doing this interim search, is there some way to have some type of input from the community?
Mhm.
And I'm not saying, I acknowledge that the community doesn't know everything and we are the final decision makers, but I think it's important to acknowledge that that is a voice out there that we want to listen to. Because I don't think anyone in this room is saying we don't want to hear that voice. We want to hear what they have to say.
So Megan, maybe one way to address that, we don't have a vote or anything on tonight's schedule, so we're not making a decision tonight, one way or another. If you put your subcommittee together this week,
Mhm.
do something, people are hearing about it right now for the first time in a lot of cases. We can discuss it and, maybe make a decision next week or.
Yeah, Jess actually brought up a great point in our subcommittee meeting about having maybe doing the subcommittee meeting at a time that people, or doing a Zoom. I feel like, I know I hate Zoom, but I feel like when we have a Zoom, people can call in, or doing it at a time when more people, instead of doing it 10 o'clock in the morning when nobody's available, maybe doing it we could do it at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or something like that, and have it open to the public. That's a great idea. And then take that feedback, whoever shows up and makes comments, and take that feedback into the meeting before we vote.
So Tracy, so you've got the second half of your sheet here, and I know the dates on this sort of assume we're doing the first half, but can you just walk us through that with dates, both if we were to start now?
Sure.
And if we were to start later?
So if you were to start a permanent superintendent search now, let's see, school vacation week starts Friday. So you lose a week. We could probably put a public survey out by the end of the week. That's something that we could do. And we would be asking the district to share that widely with staff, students, parents, the community. I would be working then to get into schools the week after February break, because my standard is that I want to make sure that I make a staff meeting at every school in order to give you that feedback. Also, I always meet with central administration in person and try to meet with the student council at least. Obviously, that depends on what the staff meeting schedule actually is. And I will say that that tends to be the thing that is kind of maybe least flexible in terms of this, because calling staff meetings that are optional means that people don't come and you don't get the same kind of input. So that would be the one thing that I would say is less kind of flexible in terms of time spent. Assuming that that's possible, I could, let's see, you'd have the position, you'd have the survey out for those 2 weeks. I could potentially be back with you the first week of March to approve a position description. Now, that would also require that you all would put together the district profile, which is a multi-page document that we require the school committee with administrative support to fill out, which talks about the towns, it talks about the district, it gives a bunch of information of that kind. That becomes part of the brochure that we put together. I would then be back with you with that and also with a potential position description, if it were possible to schedule it that first week of March. We would then probably be posting by the second week of March, in which case we usually leave positions posted for 5 weeks for that. So then we're running up against, well, we're not quite to April vacation. We're probably into Holy Week, which is tricky. So if the position were up for 5 weeks, we'd be closing on April 11th. It would be tricky to probably schedule interviews that following week for semifinalists, just because of both my own schedule and also what I know potentially the other people's schedule.
It would be impossible for me. I'm just going to come out
Well,
and
no,
say that.
it would be for semifinalists. So it would be for a search committee that you had appointed.
So-
But I
Yeah,
know that's
let's
not
have a letter.
uncommon.
All right, okay.
Right?
Yeah,
But I know that having tried to schedule things that we
Texas.
previously, you end up like
I
losing
keep-
people.
Yes, we
starting
know you're an
Tuesday.
accountant. Let her go.
All right.
Then next week then is April vacation. So you'd be scheduling semifinalists for the last week of April, beginning of May. Assuming that they make their decision that week, you could be announcing your finalists the first week of May. If you did that, then you would probably have the next 2 weeks for visits in the district and visits back out of the district. And you'd be scheduling interviews probably for the last week of May and maybe be making your decision the first week of June. The one thing that I would think would be a little tricky there is that you lose your 60-day window. So many administrators have they have to give a 60 days notice for resignation. You, considering that your contract for the next superintendent would start July 1st, you would be unable to provide them that window. Now, on the other hand, I have never, in my 10 years of doing this, I've never run into a district that's actually made a fuss about that. So, take that for what it is. But yeah, that would be kind of more, now that makes a couple of assumptions. That means that's assuming that I could actually get to staff meetings and staff meetings even exist within sort of the next couple of weeks. And that both you and I can actually meet on those days that I've outlined. Yeah. And of course, that we don't lose any time for snow, which we'll never can tell.
It's very rushed.
Zoom is great and all, but when you start doing visits and that sort of thing, sometimes you just have to deal. So that's yes, it's doable. There are probably some things that are less than ideal, but that doesn't mean it's not doable.
And then all of that, same thing, if we were to do an interim and start next year, it looks like we'd be starting over the summer.
Right, so I did have a quick conversation with Mr. Gannon about this because that's one of those where I kind of want to have the agreement of the chief administrator to say, that make this part of your kind of back to school launch, right? So, staff comes in ahead of students. If I can grab, a half hour during whatever that time is with them, then you've got your staff input before the students even walk in the building. If I can have the same kind of thing with your opening PTO meetings, then it's sort of I will also say that something that's nice, and this is not to in any way sort of disparage spring searches. It sort of is that this is now the project we're taking on for this year. One of the projects we're taking on for this year as a community is finding our next superintendent. It usually gives me a chance to get in front of the student council without too much of a problem. I mean, also, you know how people tend to think in terms of things, right? It's like back to school, it's things starting, it's a little bit more where people's brains are. Again, not to say, right, you're sending out a flurry of communication to families already. There's a link to the survey and all of the paperwork you're filling out. Please make sure you fill this out too. That then usually means that I can, by mid-September, be getting back in front of you with a position description. And then we're sort of into, it's posted for 5 weeks. Applications are due before Halloween. I'm meeting with your search committee, and they're doing semifinalist interviews during November, which is always a surprisingly short month. They announce before you break for Thanksgiving, and then you're doing in sort of the weeks that are remaining in December. Then you're doing the search, the visiting their districts, they're visiting your district. You're doing interviews, and it can be. I mean, I've done more than one search that has sort of closed on this timeline. Kind of like, you've then got at least the person selected before you break for winter break. And then maybe you're doing contract negotiations still in January, but you sort of are starting off the year. And then the other thing is that it does make for a nice sort of long transition for the new superintendent and, for your interim superintendent to do the handoff of like, they're there for like most of the budget, right? They're there for whatever town meetings and deliberations and the conversation about what work is happening over the summer and all of that kind of stuff. So I will say that that's one advantage of the fall searches, is that if you actually do have the person on, by January signed on, then there's a sort of an easy back and forth between the current superintendent and the incoming superintendent of, do you want to come to this? And do you want to, be part of this? And here's when we're meeting on this. And, assuming that it is Mr. Gannon who's still there, I know that he's been very good at that sort of thing before too. So, that would be what I would say that would happen if you were to do it in the fall end.
I'm curious, so you meant, so there's, how long is a typical overlap then for like a new and the old superintendent, or yeah.
Well, so, I mean, I don't know that there is a typical, because it entirely depends on whether or not you've done your search in the fall or you've done it in the spring. And I mean, I think, and you have more experience in this than I do. I think the level of communication entirely varies, and of course, some of that has to do with why it is that the previous superintendent's leaving. But in an ideal situation, there is plenty of communication that's going back and forth. I don't know if
if I could just say a couple of things. So whatever you guys need me to do, that's what you've hired me to do as the interim superintendent for this year or for this year or next year. My job is to make sure I do what's necessary. And that will certainly be part of it, will be transitioning the next superintendent. I think that's a huge piece. I did that in Hampton Wilbraham. Respectfully, I've been there, done that as a superintendent. I'm retired, so my job is to make sure I leave this district in a better place than what I found it. And that's the work that I'm doing. I go back to last night watching the Super Bowl and the Philadelphia quarterback saying, excellence is only surrounded by the people that are excellent as well too. And that's sort of my role. What I'm trying to do is bring some excellence around everything that we're doing here, so that we become more of a viable candidate and district for people to apply. I'd be lying to you if I didn't say to you that we as superintendents all talk, right? Whether it be snow days, whether it be anything, right? We're having a conversation. In light of everything that's going on in the world right now, we're having even more conversations. But they're asking questions, right? They've heard some of the stuff that took place previously in this district, but they're also hearing the things that are finally getting in place. And that certainly is just not me, but it's everybody now working in the same direction. I'll say one last thing. One of the things that any good superintendent, whether a veteran especially, is looking for a strategic plan. They're looking like, what direction is this district going in? So I can come and sort of make it my own and finalize and have a launching pad. So don't spend another year doing a strategic plan as a new superintendent coming on what we already have it and say, here it is, take it and run with it, instead of having to spend another year doing that. So the one thing I would ask them, again, whatever you guys decide, please don't, no, I'm not, my feelings aren't hurt, right? This is family conversation. Whatever you guys charge me to do, I'll do. But being able to get a strategic plan in place, to be able to work with a new superintendent and say, here it is. Let me walk you through this. Let me walk you through the budget process. Let me walk you through the world of special education. Let me walk you through all of that, because it really is a different district we have, right? There's a lot going on here. I feel like if I got a little more time to get more things in place, I think we might interest more viable candidates. And that's an important piece that Tracy will walk you through. What type of candidate are you looking for? Are you looking for someone that has some time as a superintendent? Or are you looking for someone that's brand new, right, that's not even been a superintendent yet? So those are conversations that you'll be having when they do that, looking in the communities. I've been part of Tracy's work that she's done before. It's great work. But I think you'll entice a larger group of candidates, right, if you have more things in place. And I think we're starting to get that. Business offices getting in place, get a strategic plan in place, get some of our other worlds in place. I think people feel better applying and looking at this district. It's a good district. I said it when I first interviewed you guys. We got work to do to become a better district, to become great. We really do. Jim Collins all day long. But we're getting there slowly. So whatever you guys decide to charge me with, I please know that I'm completely comfortable and support the process, whatever you guys need from me.
So I guess it's extending his contract, well, his contract from August to like hypothetically January. I mean, that's kind of what.
No, the whole
That is
year.
through the whole year.
The whole year.
The whole year.
Oh, okay.
But someone, let's say we found someone come January, then it would be transition period, because I'm sure that it's possible they might be leaving the place, so they might need to transition somewhere where they are.
It'd be more time to talk.
It would
Okay,
just
so
be-
the new one would be
so it wouldn't
starting
be
in
like,
February.
July
It would
one.
be.
It would be a
Right, yeah.
question mark to what we could find someone that's unemployed, yeah, or
It
they
wouldn't
might
be like
have
this
not be able to
past
start until
August,
June, yeah.
where he walks in and there's nobody in the office.
Yes.
But
I would say that it
start
would be
from scratch.
difficult to find someone who's going to be willing to start in January, February.
Yeah.
It's just not when
Makes
the things
sense.
tend to cycle in and off.
Probably June.
But when I did.
Yeah, usually July 1 is when contracts start.
When I did that with the new superintendent, when I retired from him and over, we went to school visits together. We started going to the town meetings together. We went to school committee meetings together, went to budget meetings together. So
Yeah.
it was completely, so it wasn't him alone going to those meetings by himself for the first time. It was me making those transitions. And that would be part of the job that I was charged to do as well.
Yeah.
As to do.
So Tracy, I actually have the little pamphlet that we gave incoming superintendents when we hired Mr. Zangi. And reviewing this, we actually interviewed him almost the same way. Like it was in the
Yep.
fall. It says your applications are due by like September 22nd. And I remember we had a really big, this is before COVID, so the world's a different place. I remember we had like 18, 20 people that applied. Do you find that in the fall you get a substantial, like would we have a good pool of applicants, or are people settled at that point?
So I am not seeing a big difference between spring and fall in terms of numbers of applicants. They're varying a little bit more in terms of districts lately. So I had the first search that I've had that had less than 10 applications this year. But most of them are still bringing in the high teens in terms of the number of applications.
And are like all the applicants licensed? Because I know like when we did the principal search, we had like 20 applicants, but like only 3 were actually,
So we only put forward
Qualified.
applications if they're licensed or eligible for licensure.
so they're like qualified. Okay. So that's good to know.
Which is one of the perks that I liked about MASC, that you go through and double check and triple check, which is extremely helpful.
Anne Marie Martin in our office is great at that. Yes, there's a lot of emails that go back and forth saying, I seem to be missing. Not a lot, but there are some, yes. Yeah, she checks everything, make sure that they checked all the boxes on the application, but that they actually give us all the things they checked off, yes.
Anybody other questions for Tracy?
I don't have any questions. I like the idea of a more slow, deliberate picking of the next superintendent. What's the point in like writing the ship to just rush now?
It would be very rushed, I agree. My only concern, I think Jess and I, we talked about this, about the community and just, so I think it's a great idea. What Mike said is just we'll have a subcommittee meeting and have it be like, kind of like a forum, and just see who comes and see what people have to say. And if no one comes, then I agree. I think just kind of the timing of doing it right now is, so I don't even know how you'll get to the PTOs and like the staff meetings, like this time of year, it's crazy. You're not going to do anything this week. And then they come back, it's MCAS. It's just, it seems very rushed. So, but I get it. Yeah.
And I have a different concern than you. I feel like even if we had even if this is perfect timing, I feel like we are a district in flux. we are righting the ship. Someone said, use that
Yeah.
term, and I think that was a great way to say it. There's a lot of different things, like we were 2 rural districts that used to do a lot of word of mouth, like, oh, let me just train you on the job, and there were not necessarily job descriptions. And Al is coming through and he's saying, oh, wow, we have to have a job description for this, we have to have, and I think the next person that comes in, if we had one more year of an interim, whether it's Al, we have to interview out, it could be someone else, someone to come in and say, we have to get these things in shape, so that someone walks in and says, okay, here's what my vision for the district, and oh, here's the strategic plan. So it's not just their vision, it's also our district vision that's already there. I just feel like there's too much flux right now. You want someone who's gonna wanna come in and feel like it's changing, and that's because of the hard work that Al is doing, along with the administration, and the teachers are working hard too. I think my concern, I just keep thinking we have work to do.
I totally agree with you, Laurie.
I could just say one other thing, so, oh, sorry, Jessica.
No.
There's some good people that are now on board, that we brought in the financial world, treasurer, business office, right, accountants, all of them. I think they're doing great work, technology, doing great work. I think the more time we give them to get stable in their job and secure, right, a new boss sort of comes in sometimes, and again, I've been there, done this job, right, so please appreciate that, comes in, and then they want to make some changes. I think we just need to keep some stability in what's going on and keep the work for not only for our school district, for our staff, right, but also for our communities, that they know this instability, that we're getting this through, getting things in place. I also said to you, the very first time I met you, a good instructional leader should be working himself out of a job, right? So that's my job, is to be making sure that everybody else is in play and can do their job well, and I can just sort of walk away, and that's really, I think that's what you hired me to do.
So what, Lisa, Jess, you had something to say?
Sorry.
I just like when I opened the item and I saw West Boylston was looking and how long their superintendent was there, and we're gonna do the same timeline, that was not great news. And yeah, so no, I appreciate the work you're doing to get our district stable. New qualified, people coming in for different positions, and so yes, I appreciate the work you're doing and the stability you're bringing to our district.
What if we did something like this? So next week's school vacation, right? Nobody's gonna be around, can't do anything. But we could do something Thursday. Okay.
Thursday,
If we get, so just hear me out.
Of this week?
Because let's say we did something Thursday.
the 13th, yeah.
People who want to have a say can come have a say. If they can't get to it, so be it. Next week's February vacation, the week after that, we have our budget hearing. Can we put something at the front of the budget hearing about this? We put that on the agenda, so if people didn't come Thursday, they can say something or a public comment. We can make a decision whether we want to do option A, option B. Then we can do it our budget hearing. And then if we decide we want to go with option B, that still gives us time to get started. Because, like we said, the rest of this week is a waste, next week is vacation. Would that be something interesting?
Yep.
Or not?
What are you looking to do on the 13th? It's supposed to snow.
Oh, icy snow.
That's right, it is.
But if we did a Zoom, I feel like
If we did a Zoom, maybe.
Is that Thursday?
we're gonna get we might get some weather on Thursday, but I feel like you get more people in a Zoom, it would have to
If you
be,
want to do a Zoom, that's the perfect day to do it if it's going to snow. People
but you
are
have to
home.
do it like, it has to be in the manner, whoever's running it, it's gonna have to be like, everybody gets a turn to speak, it can't be chaos, it's like everybody has a turn to say their piece. Do you know what I'm saying?
That, you're talking about chaos.
I mean, there's a raise hand function, right? I mean,
There is. I just
that's
think-
how you'd have to.
I hate
let
Zoom
them-
myself, but I feel like you get more people, and I don't know, I'm having a hard time
You're
articulating.
talking about doing the meeting at night, though. And
Yeah.
the storm looks like it's ending in the afternoon. They should have the roads cleared that night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it,
People might not, move out of their own places, you know what I mean?
What about, so like the online public survey, is there any way that we could incorporate like that now into this? Like,
or could we blast out a survey instead of actually having,
But what would that do? What would you be asking? Would you be asking?
to vote?
Yeah, so I think that's the question is,
Yeah.
I mean, so you certainly could use, I could certainly recreate the survey that we would usually put out, although arguably you potentially would be doing that twice. But we could certainly send out the survey that we usually do for superintendent searches, which does things like ask, what are the biggest needs of the district at this point? What does the district most need in terms of district leadership for their next leader? And those sorts of questions. That's what that survey looks like.
Yeah, so it's kind of.
But what you're asking for, you're not asking for, what do we see in our next leader? You're asking for, are you comfortable not going for a permanent person right now?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking.
Yeah, that survey is only good right before we're gonna be.
Usually.
So,
Yeah.
So what we're discussing right now is, do we want to consider focusing on an interim search right now?
Correct.
Or, we're not asking the community who do we want or what do we want in the next leader.
It would be, do you want to do an interim search or, I think oh, sorry, Laurie.
no,
go
I
ahead,
just,
go ahead. You said
so
it.
I know, I just want to say this before. So when you're a little kid and you say to your parents, just write a check, which my kids don't even know what checks are anymore. Just write a check. And you're like, no, I know I have the money, but we can't spend it on that. I care deeply about what the public thinks, and I do not want to misstep here. However, we have an insight into things that are going on that the public doesn't, that we can't share. All of us here at this table, all different backgrounds, all different thoughts, all different approaches, know what we have to fix, what is going on, what needs to be done. At the end of the day, if the public comes back and says we absolutely should do a superintendent search, I personally do not feel that is in the best interest of this district, because I do not think we are going to get someone, I don't think we're going to get the best person. That's just my feeling. So when we're asking whether we want to do an interim search, or if you're going to do a survey and then we're going to vote, we have to vote responsibly with our conscience. And if we go against what the public wants, they might take that offensively. So I'm just throwing that out there as we have an inside look that they don't have. And so that's why we have this, that's why it seems like we all kind of feel like Al would be the good next choice. The only thing that's holding us back is that we did it wrong the last time. We were misinformed. We made the best decision at the time, and it was good in some ways and not so good in others. And we're in this situation. I just wanted to throw that out there because.
So when I asked you to get together Thursday and talk about it,
Yep.
I kind of meant within your subcommittee, talk about pros and cons of doing it this way.
Right, sell your case.
Right.
Okay.
And then
Rather
come back
than
to the
ask
committee.
opinions.
No, but I'm just
like,
saying if
speak
we're talking
why.
about throwing out,
Right.
if we're talking about throwing out a survey,
So a survey is not going to
Instead-
capture what you're looking for.
Survey,
You're looking for an opportunity to explain to everyone why we think that we're prioritizing stability over a permanent superintendent right now.
Which we don't necessarily need to do a subcommittee to do that. We can do that
Yeah,
right now.
it's more like outreach is what we're just letting everyone know and make sure that everybody understands that why, not so much asking.
but
for
so basically we're
permission.
just going to do this again on Thursday.
No, it's, for me.
Maybe we don't. Maybe we do it right now.
So for me, it's about giving the public, and I know we put it out there that we were meeting today about this, and there's one person sitting here, and I applaud you because you've been sitting here the whole time quietly. But it's putting it out there, and we've done forums a few times, right? We did it with masks, we did it with an SRO. What else did we do it for? We did it for a few different things. It would be kind of like, come say your piece. And if you don't show up and you don't say your piece, then don't complain. This is decision we're making. And it would have to be, to Laurie's point, yeah, survey right now, I agree, because you're getting too many cooks in the kitchen. There's people that are just like, oh yeah, whatever, I don't care, check the box. But I think if you have a forum and somebody's actually taking the time to come out and to say, hey, this is why I think we should, and I actually think the public is gonna say, we love Al. Can he stay? You know what I mean? But I think it's going to give everybody, and I'm saying not just the public, the union, the teachers, everybody, and it's trying to do right by the public and saying, here's your turn to say your piece.
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying we're going to make decisions based on this, but we're having a forum and we want to hear what you have to say. That's, I think, the point. I feel like that was where people were angry with us about the whole Carol thing. We just went right in, we're like, all right, we're interviewing her and we're gonna hire her. Like, we didn't have other people, we never had a forum, people didn't get to ask her questions.
But she was the permanent one, though. I mean, this is just more.
Correct, we did
so-
we just hired her as permanent, but some people might be thinking,
But when
why
you have the interim, when we have the interim interviews, then the public could be a part of that as well. I understand what
we
you're
could
saying.
also have the interim interviews be a part of the public, because for,
What has to be.
How about, what about this?
so we'd
So
have to do a whole committee.
Megan, what if we talked about it right now? Which way are we leaning? And then we can certainly ask people for their input. I mean, like you
People
said,
can
one
email,
person
they're
showed up
probably
today.
emailing.
Like
and-
you said, one person
That's
showed
good,
up
that's a good
today,
point.
right? They knew this was coming. This agenda's been out there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I told people about
um,
it, so I guess you're right.
Lisa, what are your thoughts?
Well, I already said.
She said.
I'm
Yeah, let's just,
hugely-
for the record,
hugely
go
in
around
favor
again.
of keeping Al for as long as we can keep him.
Same, stay with an interim, wait.
Jess?
I am having conflicting feelings because I am immensely appreciative of all that Alice had done for our district, but I think there's that lack of input piece that we have been criticized for. So I think having that forum, if weather allows, I think would be a good idea.
All right.
To just, again, like, not everyone listens to our meetings, so again, explain our position, why we think this is good in the short and the long term. And then people have a chance to say their piece, so.
Lord?
I completely understand what Jess is saying, and I don't disagree. However, I feel like I feel like with what I know, I don't see how, if everybody says you should go out and hire a superintendent, I just don't see that working. So it's just with what we know, so.
Megan?
Yeah, I do agree. The timeline is ridiculous to hire a full-time this year. But I still am, I feel like I've taken a lot of heat for, you know what I'm
I
saying?
agree
I
with
mean,
that,
That's
with,
the position you're in.
yeah, you're right. But can we do a Zoom? Can we do something on Thursday? I'm happy to run it or be there or whatever, just if for nothing more than to check the box. But I do agree. I think even if everyone came out and was like, yeah, let's do a full search, I don't see in my mind how that would be feasible right now. And side note, because I haven't said this enough, I think you're doing a great job, Al. Like, I hope you know that. I mean, I talk to him all the time.
This is
So,
not about me.
It's not about me. I'm trying to,
But I don't think the public knows that he's here till 7, 8 o'clock at night. He comes
Yeah.
in on weekends. Like, he works well beyond what we're paying him for, because there's so much work to do, and that's where the concern is. And it matters to me what the people want, but at the end of the day, we're in charge of giving these kids the best education they can have, and it starts at the top. And I just don't think that. I understand, it's tough.
I mean, I guess to your point, or to Tracy's point, or everybody's point, we have to do a search for an interim.
yes.
So I don't want to make a unilateral decision here, but it sounds like, Jess, you're a little more hesitant, but everybody else is comfortable with doing an interim search. I'm open to ideas, how you want to move forward, but we should probably decide something tonight. So one option is do nothing right now, have something on Thursday, whether it's in person or Zoom, I don't know. Does anybody have another idea?
I think we could also we could state our case, it's not really feasible to go to a full search right now. Interim is the best way to go. If you want, and then in the future, you're gonna have your opportunity to voice your concerns about who the best interim person is, that's still on the table for them. So I think that takes that, what you're talking about, Lori, is that we can't feasibly do this right now. We wouldn't most likely wouldn't vote to just start a search right now. So if, no matter what, we're doing an interim, the public's comment will be in terms of who the interim should be.
Yes,
It's
I agree. Well, and, another good, when you were talking, you made me think of something. We're not delaying the search for a new superintendent a whole year. We're actually just delaying it like 6 months because we'd be starting at the end of the summer or during the summer.
Yes.
So it's not like it's even that, which isn't, it's crazy to think it's not that far away. Do you know? So, and I also like the idea of if we had someone, by the end of 2025, then Al can say, hey, I'm going to a budget meeting. Do you want to go and meet, the Boylston FinCom, the Berlin FinCom, come meet these people. Let me introduce them. So it's like, it's a little bit softer versus in the middle of budget season, which is already crazy, trying to get all of this done. And, to the people that are going to say, well, why didn't you start this sooner? We were trying to make heads or tails. Like we walked into, because someone's going to say it. It was the chaos that Al has sorted through from the beginning of the year. Again, it's mom and dad knowing what's going on in the checkbook or in the family that aren't telling the kids because you're going through, you're fixing this, you're fixing that. It's not, you don't need to know. We're getting it done. And so I just think of the fixes that you've done, Al, that have got us to the place that we need to be.
So Beth, it sounds like maybe, are you suggesting
We put out like a timeline.
we don't necessarily do like a forum, but more of a presentation of why?
Yeah, just and put out a timeline and then make it clear that we're not just rubber stamping through 2026. We're just like you said, the process is going to start this summer, which is not that far away.
Yep.
I think if we put it as a timeline and sold our case as to why we're doing this, and then this is the piece where we're going to pull you in. We're going to pull you in for the interim superintendent search, and then we're going to pull you back in for the permanent superintendent search.
Okay,
and that way.
That Thursday, or maybe should we wait, or what do you think?
I don't even know, is this something that you need to do in a meeting, or is this something that you blast out?
Fair
A
enough.
timeline,
That's
like
the
a
question.
really-
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Good timeline of date of what happens at each event.
We can certainly put that out with a link to this report.
I think including certain parties, like, PTO members or the union, and different people within the committee to review those applications for the interim, I think is super important.
Because the fact of the matter is we have to do an interview no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's not like if we're gonna interview for an interim, as much as we think Al is doing a good job, if someone else comes along who presents like they can do better, we have to give that person a fair chance, and that might be,
All right, so A, it sounds like we want to do the interim search. Does anyone disagree?
No, we have to do the interim.
Does anyone else disagree?
No, I agree.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, we have to. Yes, we have to do it.
No, yes,
Just making sure.
I know, Jess, you're hesitant, but are you getting more comfortable with what everybody's saying?
I don't think we could attract a good candidate right now that we would want long-term or who would want to stay long-term. So ultimately,
Okay,
yeah.
so it sounds like maybe you do agree with what I thought.
I feel like Jess and I are on the same page.
Yeah, it's hard, input needs to be taken and parties need to be involved.
Okay, so what if we did this then? Forget, if there's gonna be weather Thursday, forget doing something
It's
Thursday.
really hard, yeah.
It sounds like we want to do the interim search, okay? So we'll put something together which basically summarizes what we've all said tonight. Put out the timeline.
Do we have to get rid of the forum idea? Even could we put out this and then say, come share your feelings about that, or?
On Thursday or a different
Not
day?
Thursday.
Thursday's gonna be a tough day, yeah.
So,
It's
yeah,
right before break.
so if we're not pushing to get something done before school vacation, just timing wise, then yeah, we could definitely, once we come back from break, we can put this out now, people can talk about it while they're in line at Disney for 3 hours, and, whatever, come back and we can put something out there.
do we vote on this, Mike? Like, do we vote on this at a future meeting and then if people want to speak, I'm not sure what the next step is.
I didn't put a vote on the agenda and I don't want to break any rules. So,
We're meeting tomorrow.
we are meeting tomorrow.
Tracy, this is something we would have to vote on as a committee, correct? That we want to do an interim rather than
It
a
would
full
be
search?
wise to.
So we're meeting tomorrow,
Why don't
and
we do that tomorrow, because more people will be paying attention. tomorrow.
probably have on the agenda tomorrow, any business unforeseen by the chair within 48 hours, and this would be considered that, and you could amend it and make sure Nicole puts the date on it and put it out tomorrow morning. so people
Sure,
know.
good timestamp it right away.
Timestamp it. Don't want to make the same mistake twice, right?
Want to do that? Is everybody comfortable with that?
I think we need to reiterate what was discussed tonight, though.
Yeah, do that.
I think that's probably one of the toughest jobs, right? You have three major roles as a school committee,
So tough.
right? Policy, budget, and hiring this next person, right? That's one of the toughest jobs, and you want to make sure you do it right this time. And
Yes.
I appreciate that. And like I said, I'm not, please, I don't take this personal at all. But you've hired me to do a job, and I'll do whatever job you ask me to do. Just know that. So I'm not taking it personal. But I enjoyed, I've done a lot of jobs for you guys. I have to tell you, I really have enjoyed the work I'm doing. I really have. It has definitely been probably the hardest job I've ever had in my career, even being a principal and all those other roles I've had. But
my God.
I think I've enjoyed this probably the most. It really has been a challenge, and I've enjoyed seeing the changes. And I'm not just saying this because it's publicly and with you guys, but you guys have been a great school committee to work with. You really have been, right?
No.
It's like, I've appreciated that, and I've said that to Tracy as well too. Like, I've enjoyed working with you guys as school committee. You guys have definitely helped me clear the way so I can make the changes that I believe as the instruction leader needs to be made to make this a better district. So I thank you for that as well too. And any superintendent that wants to come here in the future, I would say that as well too. So I thank you for that as well too. And I've worked with a lot of school committees, so thank you for that.
All right. I think that's it. We'll put it on, we'll get the agenda updated. We'll vote on it tomorrow. We'll reiterate everything we talked about tonight. If you have any other questions, you can bring them up then as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
All right, could I have everybody good? Any last minute questions, comments, anything?
I think the last comment I just want to make is that I think we're way better today than we have been in a long time. And so when I say like we're a district in flux and that's why we should consider an interim, I don't want people to think that I don't think we're a great district. I think we're an awesome district, but I think we're headed towards greatness
Yeah.
and just takes a little bit of time.
There's a lot of balls in the air still.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, I totally, that point I 100% agree with. It would be nice to have the continuity.
All right.
Okay.
Could I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Lori and Jess, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? All right, meeting is over. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So do you send this to you as a document so you can use
Please.
this as a backup?
So is Nicole going to do these